Since our body is a community of 50 trillion cells, Earth itself is a community of many, billions and trillions of cells. If I count all the species on Earth, maybe each member of each species on Earth can be compared to a cell in the body. And you can visualize Earth itself as or herself as a living being. No, and that idea is called Gaia. She becomes a goddess. And your goddess's body, we all are like, living organisms, and we are like each of these cells. As a human species, if we, the human members of the human species, are not functioning in harmony with one another, and we are waging war against one another, then we are suffering from a autoimmune disease. In human society, shame and guilt are two emotions that are used to program our mind. We are shamed into behaving appropriately, and what is appropriate is defined by the powers that be it parents, be it teachers, be it government. There is no bad person. There is only limited understanding and bad habits because of limited understanding. It is the programming which is making this person mad. I showed a video now where two people, one Sadhvi and Bruce Lipton, they are presenting their views about life and their life-changing moments and their personal journey and their personal viewpoints about life and happiness and stuff. So Bruce Lipton is the person who is of special interest to us, because we'll be exploring his ideas for a few sessions, because he's a very important person in terms of what we are trying to accomplish, because he is one of the few persons who are active in scientific discipline, who have brought science closer to spirituality. And he's a shining example of how when a person goes deep into life using even research, scientific research, they often come to very similar conclusions, which were reached by our, rishis and wise sages of the ancient past. So that's why, and also because, he talks in terms of modern science. He's a biologist, so he talks in terms of how biology also is influenced by the mind. So that is why he becomes very important. And not only that, he did not stop with theory. He goes on to apply these principles, in his personal life. So I will again share with you today another video, which is again Bruce Lipton's interview with a person called Iain McNay, who has a very well-known channel dedicated to spirituality called Conscious TV. So in that Conscious TV, Bruce Lipton explains from the very beginning, from his childhood, how he got fascinated by biology and how he went into biology research, and then in a much more detailed manner, how he gradually realized that, what the dominant paradigm in biology is saying, which is genes control life, is not true. It is in fact the mind which controls the genes, and it is the environment, which being interpreted by the mind indirectly controls the genes, or even directly controls the genes. So it is the mind and the environment which are more important than the genes. And when he talks about the environment, he also talks about not only the external environment but also the internal environment, because internal environment is the internal mental emotional environment. Now all of us are interpreting reality and thereby creating a mental emotional environment. Mental environment in terms of understanding, beliefs and all, and emotional environment in terms of moods and the way we perceive and feel reality most of the time. So even the internal environment is very important, and the external environment, because it shapes the internal environment, is also very important. And then he goes on to explain how initially, he tried to convince his colleagues about these, breathtaking ideas, and how, the inner environment affects the genes and all. If we can develop a very beautiful mindset internally, it can heal the body, it can create, a wonderful, harmonious, healthy and happy lifestyle. But then, at that time, unfortunately, when he was telling these things, he was personally going through a very turbulent phase, in his personal life. And as a result, he was mentally, emotionally not very, very peaceful. The people used to, retort to him, yeah, all that is wonderful, but your personal life doesn't seem to be validating what you are saying. So that he, initially he used to say that, you do what I say and don't do what I do. But now he tells in a jocular way. So it establishes the fact that when you want to teach something, You have to become an embodiment of what you want to teach. It's not enough to just give the scientific, insights or scientific facts. So as a result of that, it became his passion to embody a healthy and a beautiful mind, so that he can bring about miracles in his personal health and his personal well-being and his personal life space. And as a result of that, demonstrate in a very holistic manner that the scientific insights need not remain a scientific insight, can be embodied and can be practiced as a discipline to transform our personality, so that we go from reacting to creating. Bruce Lipton believes that we can create our life as we wish, including our health, relationships, wealth, abundance, success, fulfillment of any desire, you name it. You can create such a, he says, creating a heaven. You can create your own heaven, and in that heaven you can include even other people who are in your circle. So that is the potential of the human mind, and this is very amazing, because the same thing the ancient sages and even modern sages are telling, that we are creators if we are able to enlighten ourselves sufficiently. So in a way, he is talking about enlightenment, though he doesn't use the word. He's telling about embodying these principles. So in this video that I will now show you, he will explain very eloquently some further ideas that he developed, and which again are not uniquely his own. They have been talked about by other people also. For example, he talks about the programming. He says that only 5% of our time we are running from our conscious mind, and the remaining 95% of the time we are basically running our life from our unconscious programming. And that unconscious programming which runs our life, he calls it the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is not the idea which has been shared first of all by Bruce Lipton. There are other famous teachers who have talked about the subconscious mind, most famous being Joseph Murphy, who wrote a very powerful book called The Power of Subconscious Mind, some maybe 1995 years ago. Okay, so he is not the first person to discover this idea, but he has discovered this idea through his scientific research, and that is why he becomes a very important person. Because we are modern, scientifically trained people. When we hear things from some scientifically trained person, it gives more validity, right? So he shares that idea, and then he also shares in further, videos which I may show if you like, how to do that. It is one thing to know that this is what needs to be done, but then how to do that is also very important. So we will again go to other resource people who will teach us how to, achieve that, how to bring the subconscious mind under our control, so that even when we are not consciously trying, our subconscious mind doesn't try to sabotage our life, but supports us. So what Bruce is saying is that through conscious mind, let's say I desire something, but those desires do not come true because our subconscious mind sabotages it. How? Because the programs that it has running in it do not support my ambition. For example, some student may want to top the class, right? That is the conscious desire. But when he starts to study, the subconscious mind, the patterns in that do not allow him to concentrate for long on his studies. It wanders off here and there. Before he realizes he has wasted 15 days. It happens, no? You can't study in the moment. You can't plan during the week or during the month. Life just goes on and on in a very unconscious way. So suddenly you realize exams have come and you are not prepared sufficiently, even though the conscious desire was to top the exam. So why the desire did not come true? Because the subconscious programming did not support the conscious desire. So that is what he's telling about. So the subconscious programming has to support the conscious desire if we want to fulfill our mission, goal, ambition, which is to create a personal heaven in our life. Okay. So that is what he goes on to say. And then, he spends his remaining life, to discover those methods by which we can reprogram the subconscious mind. Little bit he shares in this interview, and then later again, he has a website of the brucelipton.com where he has shared many other resources. And there are other people also around the world who have understood this and who are basically experts in reprogramming the subconscious mind. So one endeavor which I will have is to help us to learn how to reprogram the subconscious mind, because it is true that we have two parts of the brain. One is conscious, other is the subconscious, and then there is unconscious also. But we are not so much interested in the unconscious as we are in the subconscious. Why? Because subconscious is immediately controlling our behavior. So what happens in our brain is that our brain has a very little conscious space, and it has a lot of space for memory. So in a way, the RAM is very little. What is that? RAM? No, RAM. RAM is very small, and it has a very big, let's say hard drive where it can record patterns. So what happens is that when we start to learn something new, then that something new initially we struggle to learn. But slowly, as we persistently try to learn, for example, learning to drive a car, it becomes a subconscious pattern in the subconscious mind. That is why after a while, we can drive the car subconsciously without paying too much of conscious attention. Very little of the conscious mind is required, and mostly the car is driven by the subconscious mind. That is why you can even talk on a cell phone if you're an expert driver while driving the car, because your subconscious pattern for driving the car is so strongly engraved that it takes care that no accident happens. So that is true with every skill that we master. The subconscious mind, after a while takes over, okay, and runs the show. In the previous video, that we saw, Bruce Lipton explained about, how the cells were his guru. He was looking at the behavior of the cells, and then he found that at the cellular level, the genes were, not controlling the life, but genes were rather controlled by the environment. And that is how, he broke away from the dominant scientific paradigm. He was a faculty in a medical school, being a medical researcher doctor. He was teaching that genes control the health in the medical school, and he had a tenure in a university, which he will explain in this forthcoming interview. Despite that, he felt that I did not feel that I can keep my integrity by teaching something which I know to be false. So he walked away from the very secure job of a professor in America, which is a very, very highly lucrative job for a researcher. And he walked away, took that risk because he wanted to, stay true to his inner soul or inner being. And thereafter, he started, spreading these ideas and started working upon himself to become an exponent of what he's trying to teach. And then he has brought together so many other like-minded researchers, people, scientists. It's a now huge bandwagon, which is a substantial, force in shaping the public opinion. But still, the public opinion predominantly is governed by the dominant paradigm, because such people are very few and very far in between. So in a way, in our group, Grow Your Light, we want to join that bandwagon of similar people, where we want to change the dominant paradigm. So dominant paradigm is matter controls life, and we want to teach that it is the mind and the spirit which controls life. So as is the mind, so is the life. Right? So our mind and our body, they are working in unison. So if our mind is healthy, naturally that will reflect in the health of the body. There is incredible amount of research, which further Bruce will present in some other videos, which, he explains little bit in the previous video also. There's something called telomere. Telomere is a substance in the body which is responsible for our age, how long we will live, and aging process. At what age we'll start to grow old. The gray hair and the wrinkles will start, and the cells will start to die, and they will not be replenished. Till a certain age, cells can get replenished because of the substance called telomere. So we explained that in the previous video, that how, when the DNA is copied by something called mRNA. DNA is like a stock of intelligence that runs the body. And there is something called mRNA. So this mRNA is another molecule which is able to tap into the DNA based upon what exactly is required. Let's say that some illness has afflicted us. A particular antibody is to be made to cure that illness. Now that antibody, how to make that knowledge is stored in the DNA, right? So the body needs to unlock that intelligence from the DNA. So this mRNA will tap into the DNA stock of intelligence into that particular gene which controls that knowledge or information, and it will copy that particular gene or DNA. And that copying, as the mRNA will copy that DNA, Bruce explains like, no, if you look at my arm, I'm copying like this till I reach the end of my arm. Now here where my fist is, that point I can't copy. Okay. That is where what happens, the copy of the DNA that the mRNA makes is not a fully 100% perfect copy. It's a little bit compromised copy. It's like a photocopying machine which can't print the same quality as the original, right? So it gets little bit shorter. Now, this, when it starts to happen, aging starts to happen and biological death starts to happen. But when we are younger, what nature has provided is this compound or substance called telomere. So as we reach this end, now I want to copy this also. So what happens is, as long as you are young, little bit of telomere, layer is formed at the end, and the mRNA molecule can travel a little bit further and copy this also. If telomere is not there, the mRNA can't copy the DNA fully. So as long as we are younger and telomere is still there in the body, we can still copy the DNA, and no matter how many times our cells die, it can be replenished. They can be replenished because the DNA stock is still capable of replenishing or providing the intelligence which will help the body to replenish the cells. So what he discovered was that as you make your mind very beautiful, the internal environment very beautiful, very happy, you are given more telomere. The telomere starts to increase. It's an enzyme. That particular enzyme is secreted more and more by the body, by the cells. There are certain cells which secrete the telomere. So they are able to secrete more and more, happier you become. So it's another added incentive of becoming happy from inside. If you become happy from inside, your biological age can be increased. And Bruce says in another video somewhere else, which I know, he says that as of now, scientific estimate is that a very truly happy person from inside can very easily live a very healthy life up to 140 years. 140, that is scientific consensus. It can become even more also. So when we now understand this, it is no longer a surprise that some yogis live 150, 160, 170 years. We have such stories in India, no?
Yeah.
Now we can understand such yogis. Maybe they are so blissful that their DNA can keep on replenishing the supply of cells, because telomere stock is too high. And who knows, beyond Bruce Lipton's level, someone may become so ecstatic with joy that they may become immortal. We have stories like that also. There is a person called Mahavatar Babaji, about whom Paramahansa Yogananda refers to in his autobiography, which is called Autobiography of an Yogi. Very famous book. In that book, he refers to his guru's guru. His guru was Yukteswar Giri, and Yukteswar Giri's guru was Mahavatar Babaji. And Mahavatar Babaji is supposed to be, you may be shocked, you may not believe, but many people, have seen him, have met him, and the evidence is too much to discard this fact. Okay, that this person was born before Adi Guru Shankaracharya. Adi Guru Shankaracharya has met him and has taken Diksha from him. He has guided him also. So his age is estimated to be more than 2000 years. Who will believe this? Who will believe this? He may be a contemporary of Jesus Christ, or maybe a little bit older than him. Now who will believe this? And still roaming around in the Himalayas here and there, and suddenly appearing before some very advanced spiritual practitioners. Okay. So maybe there is a level like that, at which the even physical body becomes immortal, and he can appear and disappear. He can simply appear in flesh and bone and disappear. And when you touch his body, he looks very real. So I'm wondering, Amma often says, I'm putting many dots together now. I mean, it might be bending your mind, but still let me unpour everything. I mean downpour everything, and then see where it takes us. So Amma says that creator has become the creation. Now Amma knows the supreme truth. Okay. And she is saying that I have often wondered about it because my experience of meditation, I'm a very advanced and very deep meditator personally. So when I meditate, no matter how deep I go, I'm never able to get rid of the matter. Matter still clings to me. I want to break free from matter, but I'm never able to. Till now, I've never succeeded. Matter still clings to me. I have reached states where I am transcendent to matter, but matter is very much there. Okay, and I have tried to transform the matter, but it is impossible for me at the level at which I am. But it seems to me that there are even deeper levels at which even matter may start to become transmuted. Now, I'll give you a very famous historical anecdote. Kabir, when he died, Sant Kabir, very famous Hindi saint poet. I hope you have heard his name. Saschit, you heard his name?
He has written Dohas, right?
हाँ, पोथी परी परी जग मुआ पंडित भयानक होए, ढाई आकर प्रेम का पढ़े सो पंडित होए. Very famous and favorite, doha of mine from Kabir. People read fat books, but no one becomes a jnani or very wise man. But if you understand the ढाई means 2.5 letters of the word called prem, love, you are a jnani. So a jnani is basically an embodiment of love. That's what he says. Because when you become enlightened, you become full with love. So that Kabir, he was followed by both Hindus and Muslims. Some believed he is a Muslim, some believed he is a Hindu, because he was raised by Muslim, couple, but he was adopted by them. He was found under a tree by the couple. So people say that he was abandoned by a Hindu mother. So as a result, by birth he is Hindu, and by upbringing he is Muslim. So both Hindus and Muslims used to follow him. But when he died, the Muslims wanted to bury his body, and the Hindus wanted to cremate his body. And there are thousands of Hindu followers and thousands of Muslim followers, and they are like fighting outside in the room where his body is kept. Now, what happened was that when they opened the room to finally, they decided they will cut the body in half. As usual, statistical solution, they will cut the body in half. Half will be buried, half will be cremated. And Kabir became, perhaps sick and tired of this nonsense. So when they opened the room finally to do, the needful, they found that the body is not there, only flowers are there. This is a very famous historical anecdote, and though I can't prove it, but given the certainty with which it has come down the generations, I accept it to be true. Okay, up to you to accept it or not accept it. But if this is true, then obviously Kabir is a great master. And there are many stories, where the local, the king or the emperor, he wanted to kill Kabir because he did not bow down before him. He was a Muslim emperor, and Kabir did not bow down before him. And he was told to bow down before the emperor, but he never bowed down. So he wanted to burn him. He came out of fire. Wanted to drown him. He came out of the river. He was chained and a stone was kept on his body, but he simply came out of the river. Then, he tried to trample him with an elephant, but the elephant refused to trample him. And then ultimately the emperor understood that, this is not an ordinary person. He is a very, elevated peer or fakir or whatever in his language. So he surrendered and bowed down and sought his forgiveness. So idea is that, Kabir was a great master, and after his death, he was able to do this miracle, which means that it is possible for a certain level soul to transform the body into anything, flowers or whatever, maybe even vanish the body. There's another story in Swami Rama's book. I forget the name of the book, but in that book he mentions another master whom he met, who simply disappeared one fine day. Bodily, he just vanished. He just vanished in thin air one fine day. So such anecdotes are there. So could it be possible that there is a level at which, if we take our consciousness, even such miracles are possible? What to talk about healing a illness or something like that. But at least Bruce Lipton has scientifically proven that it is possible to heal illnesses, and have a very beautiful and healthy, life, long life, very happy, blissful life, very creative life. And he has done it through scientific research, and hence he is a very, very important person for us to understand. Okay. Then another important, point which we saw in the last video was, the Sadhvi was telling about, out of the many things that she told, one important thing was that thoughts are like buses or trains. They have a destination. So if you choose a thought, be very careful about it, because every thought will take you to a certain destination. And that she did not tell what is the destination, but I will explain. It is a feeling state. Each thought or train of thoughts will take you to a certain feeling state. For example, a certain reality you are trying to interpret in a negative manner, it will produce sadness, it will produce frustration or anger. So in a way, the sadness, the frustration, the anger is the destination, and the negative interpretation is a thought. So this particular negative interpretation, a thought which is of that type, is a vehicle. If you choose that thought, you will end up with a negative feeling state. So each thought is like a vehicle. No matter how attractive the thought is, the vehicle is, be very careful before boarding the vehicle. Because if you do not apply your discretion, you may board the wrong bus and find yourself in a wrong destination, sick destination, unhealthy destination. So that was a very important point, and perhaps I have never heard anyone explain this in this very metaphorical. It's a very beautiful metaphor. It's a very beautiful metaphor. So because generally many people say, no, be careful about your thinking and all, but then when it is explained in a metaphor, then we can relate to it better. So whenever you have an angry thought or a blaming thought or a sad thought, become very alert and stop it there and then. Realize it's a train. Don't board the train. Just get down. This train is not taking me to happiness. So any train which is not taking us to happiness, let's get down from that train. So that was a very beautiful contribution by her, I feel, which is, I think, 2 or 3 most important points from the last video. So that is the summary, right? So now we'll go to one more video, which is a basically interview of Bruce Lipton, where he brings about many more points as compared to the last video. Okay, so I'll share now.
TV. My name is Iain McNay, and today our guest in the studio is Bruce Lipton. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
So,
is the sound audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Bruce has written a book which came out 5 years ago, Biology of Belief, which has sold really, really well. And he has a new book out fairly recently, which I had the talking book of, Spontaneous Evolution. And we're going to talk to Bruce a little bit about his history and how he got to be a biologist and how he had certain realizations about how the body works and how, in fact, life works. And also we're going to talk about the contents of both books. So let's start, first of all, Bruce, with an experience you had when you were 7 years old at school and you first looked into a microscope. So I think that was the beginning of a change in your life, wasn't it?
Well, it was absolutely a big change in my life. You know, being a little kid at 7 years old, the whole world is bigger than you are. And when I looked into a microscope for the first time and saw like an amoeba moving around and a paramecium darting about here and there, in my little child mind, I thought, oh my gosh, they're not like pinballs bouncing around. They have intentions. They're moving. They're like little people. So I grokked this idea of cells are like miniature people. And I'm very excited because there was a world smaller than me. So it was like, as a young kid, that became, oh, I'm looking into another world. And it's interesting because while I was 7 years old when I did that, my fascination with microscopy and biology continued until I was in graduate school and had then graduated to electron microscopy and now was flying through the structure of the atoms and the molecules making up a cell. So basically was seeded at 7 and matured by the time I got into graduate school.
And your mother bought you your own microscope, so you were able to do this at leisure and find more and more about how everything worked?
Oh, I was, as a kid, I just got so caught up with it. I remember I spent one entire summer because I wanted to take a photograph through the microscope. And I knew I could see it, but every time I held a camera up, I tried to do it. And it took me about a summer, and I finally, at the end of the summer, got a microscope after probably hundreds of dollars worth of photographic material. But it was like my persistence of I wanted to see and study these images in the microscope.
So you eventually became a biologist. What did you actually learn then?
Well, it was interesting because I became a biologist, a developmental cellular biologist. I'm working on cells, of course, and in my graduate work, I was cloning stem cells. And it's interesting because a lot of people think stem cells are something brand new that just came into this world recently. And the fact was, I was cloning stem cells back in 1967, 40 years ago. And the significance was, while I was doing this research, I was also teaching medical students. So I was teaching medical students the foundation of how cells work, the conventional story out of the textbook, genes control life, what we call the genetic determinism, the belief that genes control your traits, behavior, your physical characteristics, etc. And what my research revealed when I was studying the stem cells was this, very profound. I put one stem cell in a petri dish all by itself, and it would divide every 10 to 12 hours. So it'd be 2, 4, 8, 16 cells, 32 cells. After about 2 weeks, I have thousands of cells in the petri dish, but what was unique? They were all genetically identical. But then I did the experiment. The experiment was to take some cells out of the dish and put them into a separate dish with a different environment.
Okay.
And so the environment is a culture medium, but the culture medium to cells is like the world that we live in. It's got the air, the water, the food, all the things in it. So I take the cells out of my stem cell dish, put them in a separate dish with a different environment, and the cells form muscle. But then I went back to the same dish with genetically identical cells in it and took some cells out and put them in a different environment, and they form bone. And then I went back to the same dish with genetically identical cells and put them in a third petri dish with a different environment, and they form fat cells. And there I was confronted with this reality. All the cells are genetically identical, but they had different fate, fat, muscle, bone. And I said, simple question, what controls the fate of cells? And the answer is the environment. It was the only thing that was different because they were all genetically identical. So I started to really say, oh my goodness, here I am teaching genes control life to the medical students. And yet the cells were revealing to me that, hey, they all had the same genes, but it was the environment that I put them in. And so the environment controlled their life. And a very simple experiment that is very profound for us today is if I took my dish with plastic petri dish with cells in it and moved it from a healthy environment to a less than healthy environment, the cells get sick. And if I were a doctor of cells, you might say, well, what kind of drugs would you give these cells? And it turns out, no, you don't give the cells any drugs. You just take the dish from the bad environment, put it back into a good environment, and the cells will innately, naturally come back to health again.
So how did this realization impact you at the time? Because you were teaching something completely different.
Yes.
You did this experiment and you realized what you were teaching wasn't the full truth.
Oh, absolutely. And then I had a problem with my colleagues because, first of all, they doubted my work, and then I brought them into the experiments and I had them observe them, watch them, and they all said, wow, yeah, the environment controls the cells. But they wanted to marginalize it, so they would say, oh, that's an exception or an anomaly because we're teaching genetic control. It didn't fit the story. The net result, what it led me to do was I had tenure. I had tenure at the university. I walked out of the university and said, look, I can't keep my integrity and at the same time teach something I know was patently wrong. So I walked out because I saw that teaching the belief that genes control life was very, very incorrect. And it's very interesting because I did that in 1970. Now that's like 40 years ago. And guess what? The new science that is just coming into the forefront of our world today is something called epigenetic control. What I was teaching was genetic control by genes. The new science, which is now coming around, is called epigenetic control. And what that means, you understand the prefix epi means above. So you say epidermis, that means the layer above the dermis skin. If I say epigenetic control, literally it says control above the genes. And this is the new science. And why is it profound? Because when you teach genetic control, you teach victimization. You didn't pick the genes as far as we know. The genes control your traits. You can't change the genes, so you become victimized by your heredity. And the new science, epigenetic control, reveals how your response to the environment, as you change your response to the environment, you change the fate of your cells, just like in the Petri dish. That makes you a master, because you are the one that has the opportunity to change your perception and response, so therefore you're the one that controls your genes.
But it took you some time, didn't it, to actually incorporate that in your life? Because I know in the Biology of Belief, your book, you talk about you went through a very unhappy period.
Yes.
Your father was dying of cancer. You had a very messy divorce from your first wife, and you weren't happy. And you thought at that point that actually your genes did influence, and you had unhappy genes. And it took you some time to actually realize that in your life, you could change things.
Yeah, it was very interesting because, again, I was still coming from the programs of my own deep beliefs, which I got from childhood on, about genetic control. And yet, it was funny because I was at that point also going out and beginning to talk to people about this new science, about if you understand what I'm talking about, you can create this fabulous life. And it was fun because in the beginning, I would try to get people together and I'd tell them, you can create this fabulous life. And they'd sit at me and look and go, you know, Lipton, for a guy who says you can create a life with this stuff, your life doesn't look that good. And essentially, I almost said, unfortunately, I didn't say the words, but I essentially said, well, do as I say, not as I do. And that was the opening point that said, oh my God, I can't just talk about the academics of the new science. To make it work, you actually have to apply the principles of the new science. And that was a change point in my life where I said, well, I'm not going to lecture on this unless I verify to myself that by influencing my personal beliefs and attitudes and things that I can change my biology. And it was wonderful because it only took just a short time to realize how I manifest profound changes in my life by taking in the understanding that how I see the world, my perceptions, control not just my internal biology and my genetics and behavior, but it controls how I create in the world around me. So I went from a world of almost self-destruction into this world of more mastery. And the most exciting thing is I found since that time that I absolutely live in heaven because I've created a life.
Let's look at practically how you did that, just so people pick up a few clues.
Okay. Well, the first thing is this. The work showed that your mind's perception of the world changes your biology, the chemistry of your body, which changes your cells. And I said, okay, so if you control how your mind operates, then you can control your chemistry. But then here's where the problem comes from. There's two parts to the mind. The conscious mind, which has your personal identity, your spirit, your source attached with it, is a creative mind. The conscious mind can see into the future, can review the past, solve problems. The subconscious mind, the other mind, is more of a habit mind. That's when you learn how to do something, and once you learn how to do it, you don't have to think about it, it's automatic. Well, most of us walk around in the world thinking that we're running our lives with our creative mind. And I'd say, Emmett, what do you want out of your life? And you would say, oh, I want to be healthy, I want to have great relationships. And then you try to say, I'm running my life with these beliefs. But science has now revealed that we only run our lives with our conscious mind at most about 5% of the time.
So we're running on these subconscious programs.
95% of the time.
Okay.
And then the issue is, well, where'd you get the fundamental programs that you operate from? And here's the thing I learned is that it's in the first 6 years of our lives that the brain is in a functional state, an EEG state, the electrical activity, that is not even in consciousness. A child doesn't even reach conscious brain function until about 6. So the first 6 years of your life, your brain function is lower frequency. It's called Theta, which is like a hypnagogic trance, a hypnosis. So the first 6 years of your life, you're like a television camera, recording everything around you, everything you observe, just going in from your observations into your programming. So we acquire beliefs and attitudes and behaviors, not from ourselves, but from our parents and our family and our community. These become the fundamental beliefs. A very interesting point. The Jesuits were very proud. They would say, give me a child until it's 6 or 7 and it will belong to the church for the rest of its life. What they were saying was what they knew, which science is now finding out. The first 6 years are programming. Yes. And whatever program you get, that will be the rest of your life. So that's why they said, just give me the first 6 years. And it turns out they were precise. The first 6 years is download a program, and that's when you get your behaviors from those around you.
So you were able, by realizing this, to then look at how you were living your life on a practical level and say, I am not going to be governed by these pre-programs. I am going to live my life in a more conscious way. Am I oversimplifying
Well,
this?
yeah, that's a fundamental statement of how it works, but it's not as easy
No,
as,
I understand
okay,
that,
I've just
yeah.
changed my thinking about it.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
well, because as the thinking is not that much in our control, the brain is operating, as I said, 95% from the
Yes.
subconscious.
But how did you actually then get results in a relatively short space of time?
Well, the first thing, how does the subconscious learn? And that's a very critical thing. The conscious mind can learn from reading a book. So the subconscious mind can read a self-help book and you go, wow, that sounds really great. And then you find you read the book, but your life is still the same. And it turns out, why? And the answer is because the subconscious mind is more of a habit mind, things that you repeat over and over again.
Yes. Yeah.
So the reality is, if you can stay conscious, be present, and when those negative thoughts come in our head, and psychologists tell us 70% of the time, the thoughts that are going through our head are negative and redundant. So the same negative thoughts are going through. If you could stop those thoughts, if you could hear them as they come through, like, oh, that's not going to work, or this will never happen, those kind of thoughts. If you can hear them and stop them consciously, say, no, change the belief right there. Just give the more positive thing. As you repeat this more frequently and you keep repeating it, the subconscious mind begins to learn. So as a habit, if you stay conscious, and you have to work at it, and here's why people say, well, how come only 5% from conscious mind, 95% from subconscious? Because the conscious mind can think into the future and think into the past and solve problems. Then think about it yourself. Most of the time, you're thinking about something. Well, if you're thinking, you're using the conscious mind. Well, if you're using the conscious mind for thinking, then who's running the show? And the answer is, when you're not paying attention and you're thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow, your subconscious is running the show.
So you used the words be present.
Be present.
Which
be mindful.
we hear a lot. So be mindful, which really means be aware
Yes.
of what's going on. So you get an automatic reaction, you're aware of that, and you say, I don't want to go there, that's an old pattern, and you look at a new way to be in that situation.
Exactly. And you have to repeat it over and over again, because if you think, well, I got mad at myself yesterday because I repeated that same stupid thing, and I got mad again today because I repeated the same stupid thing, and then people give up because they get frustrated. And it's like, no, it's a habit. So you have to every day, but ultimately you can repeat it. Yet there are, fortunately now, very many new healing modalities that can help you rewrite the subconscious beliefs much faster. So I get very excited because some of this may take work for people, because you have to really be present, and yet we're so bombarded with information and our lives are so busy that our conscious mind is almost always wandering, trying to resolve issues and problems and things we have to work out, which then means the subconscious mind is running the show.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, because most people will be very familiar with this story. I tell it to my audiences and they all laugh because they're familiar with it. I say, look, you have a very close friend. You know your friend's behavior. And you happen to know your friend's parent. And at some point you see that your friend shares the same behavior as their parent. So you casually volunteer, you go, Bill, you're just like your dad. And that's when you have to back away from Bill, because Bill's the first guy that says, how can you compare me to my dad? And everyone laughs because they're familiar, but I say, no, there's two very profound points from that one story. And profound point number one, everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. He got his programming from his dad. It's only Bill who doesn't see it.
Yeah.
And profound point number two, we're all Bill, because all of us got programming, and all of us operate with these programs, and we don't even see we're doing it. That we, even when told we're doing it, will deny that we do these behaviors, because we don't even see when we're doing it. That's why it's called subconscious, below conscious.
Because you went from, and I'm quoting from your book, wanting to be anyone but me,
Yes.
to being, I think you quote yourself as the happiest man in the world. You felt so happy.
Oh,
so
my
you
gosh.
proved that this can work.
Well, I had to, because I said when I first started talking about it, it was from an academic, conscious point of view. This is what I learned. But my subconscious programs were still exactly the same. So while I had this wonderful knowledge, my life still wasn't anything I wanted to brag about it, because it wasn't. And as you know, that old game, well, who would you like to be? And I could think of anybody I'd rather be than me. And yet, when I started to apply the new science and rewrite the subconscious so it supported me, rather than the programs of limitation or disempowerment that we get from our parents and our community as children, which almost all of us get. When I put in the new programs, all of a sudden I started to find, my goodness, my life completely turned around. All wonderful things started happening in my life. I was healthier. I haven't been to a doctor in 20 years. I don't need that. I don't take any of their drugs. Why? Because most of the illness is just from the stress of not living in harmony. And when you learn to get rid of the limiting programs that we got as children and put in programs that support you, guess what? Then all of a sudden, the place turns into heaven. And it's interesting, people. I tell people, well, you create your own life, and then they look around and go, oh, I don't want responsibility for this. But I say, well, you didn't know you were creating with these unconscious beliefs. And yet then I tell people, especially people that have fallen in love, and people have fallen head over heels in love, I say, go back to that time when you first fell in love. Let me ask you a question. Were you healthy? And oh yeah, I was healthy as anything. I said, did you have energy? I said, oh, I had so much energy, made love for days in a row without even eating. And I go, yeah, and I go, and how was life for you? It was so exciting. I couldn't wait for the next day. So I said, in this little period that that I refer to as a honeymoon, I say, wasn't life like heaven on earth? And they go, well, yeah. And I go, that was not an accident. That was an actual creation. And you say, but what was different that made life so heaven on earth during love? And the answer is because you become very self-conscious of yourself. You don't rely on the habits. The day before you meet this person, you're going to go on a date. I say, especially to women, I say, how long did it take you to get dressed? And they say, well, it was 15 minutes and I was out of the house. And then I say, now, tonight, you're going to go on a date with this person who has just rocked your world. And I say, how long does it take you to get dressed? It's like, my God, it may take an hour or two. And I say, yesterday, 15 minutes, today, an hour or two. What's the difference? Yesterday, I got dressed by habit because I get dressed every day. Yeah. But tonight, I am looking in the mirror, meaning I am self-conscious. I am making sure that I represent myself to be the best individual I can be. And when both parties are not relying on the habit, and both of them are saying, I'm creating the best I can be, they're living in the moment of the now, they're being very mindful, they're being very present, and guess what? Heaven on earth is created. But unfortunately, life gets busy. It's hard to stay present.
And they're meeting as well. They're truly meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Which is also very rare, unfortunately.
Well, and why is that important? Because it did demonstrate that you did create this period, and it's available to you all the time if you knew how not to get stuck in the old habits.
Well, one of the things that I really found fascinating in your book is the fact we all have approximately 50 trillion cells in our body, and these cells are all self-sufficient. They have their own memory, they have their own immune system, and in fact you also go on to say that for 2.75 billion years there was only one-celled organisms alive on the planet.
Yeah, and the nature is, as the single cell evolved to be the most intelligent it could be, it ran into a physical limitation because intelligence is physically tied up with the membrane or skin of the cell. You can only have so much membrane. So evolution apparently stopped. It was like 2.5 billion years, just these single-cell organisms. Then it said, well, how can you have more evolution? The answer is cells decided to come together in community, because when cells come into community, they share awareness. So there's more awareness with 10 cells than there is with one cell. And there's more awareness with 1 million or 1 billion or 1 trillion. So when you look at a human being, while we see ourselves as single entities, the truth is we are made out of 50 trillion amoeba-like cells. And so our body is this giant community. And what makes it very exciting, as you mentioned, is, well, in my own work with cloning cells, I can take a cell out of your body and it could live outside of you. Why? It has its own intelligence. It has essentially every function in your body is present in a cell. So my 7-year-old vision manifests to be true when I got older, to realize cells are miniature people. And then you say, well, what about happens in the human body? And I go, this is where the issue comes in, is because you have 50 trillion cells living in community, but your mind is the government. When a government works in harmony with the people, then the people thrive and the community is in good health and grows. But when a government is not really supportive or not working in harmony with a community, then the government can cause the nature of that community to fall apart, or even lead to the end of the community. Well, that's what we're finding out. Our mind is the government. And when we entertain harmony and the right living in balance with nature and with each other, then we provide our 50 trillion cells with very life-supporting information and chemistry.
So harmony means giving the body good food.
Yes.
Not being stressed out.
Absolutely.
Living in a happy environment.
Yes. Basically, it says, as I said, when I had my petri dish of cells, if I put it from a healthy environment to a bad environment, the cells got sick. But you didn't have to give them drugs. But all you did is take the dish from the bad environment and put it in a good environment. And the joke, which I like to tell people, is Well, this happens in a plastic petri dish, but guess what? We are skin-covered petri dishes. Underneath our skin is 50 trillion cells living in a dish, and the culture medium is the blood. And so when I change the culture medium in a plastic dish, I change the fate of the cells. And I say, well, then what controls the culture medium? My blood, the chemistry. And the answer is, my thoughts influence my brain, and the brain releases chemistry that matches my thoughts. So when I'm in stress or I'm afraid of the world, I release different chemistry into the blood than if I open up my eyes and I find myself in love. I release completely different chemistry. And it's like, well, all I have to ask an individual is, how do you feel when you're in total love, or how do you feel when you're in fear? And the answer is, well, I feel totally different. And guess what? All the cells are bathed in that chemistry. And so the feeling of love produces totally different chemistry in the blood, chemistry that supports growth and healing of the body and supports the immune system. And in contrast, when we perceive reasons to be afraid and we release stress hormones into our body, we actually shut off the growth mechanisms and the immune system to save the energy. Why? Because if you believe you're going to have to run from that lion, you want all the energy available to run from a lion. So when a person is in stress, they allocate their energy reserves for fight or flight, but take it at the expense of the health of the system, the immune part of the system. And so the more stress you're under, the more bad chemistry, in a sense, of not supporting you that you experience. And it was a very important point. In our evolution, stress or fear was not the mainstay of life. The mainstay of life was to be happy and live in the harmony of the environment. Every now and then a saber-toothed tiger would come. Okay, now it's time to be stressed out. Now it's time to run. But the point is, once you escape from the saber-toothed tiger in the old days, then it's like, oh, back to health and harmony. And I say, well, what about today's world? Today's world is 24/7 run from the tiger. And this is not biologically sustainable, because the chemistry of protection contrasts with the chemistry of growth.
Yeah, it's interesting how the body, you point this out in Spontaneous Evolution, your second book, that how the body also is a snapshot of how we are as a human race.
Oh, absolutely, because what we would see from a new understanding of evolution, which is a great extension beyond the Darwinian belief, which is quite limiting, okay, and quite troublesome, in fact. Because just think about what the principal Darwinian belief is, that evolution is based on a struggle for survival with a competition for fitness. So that says, oh my God, then our world is, we're all out there in a dog-eat-dog rat race trying to survive, because if you stop running, the person behind you is going to run over you. So if that's your way of life, then every day, by definition, you are living in a stress hormone body because of all the fears that we have. And yet evolution says, no, evolution is based on community and cooperation. A body has 50 trillion citizens. They live in harmony with each other. And it turns out that every human being, we're beginning to find out, is like a cell in a larger community called humanity. So in biological terms, the organism that's evolving on the planet is not the human being. We already did that. The organism that's evolving is the superorganism called human civilization. And right now, humans are fighting each other and killing each other. And if I say, well, what would that look like inside the body if the cells fight each other and kill each other? And I say, oh, well, that's called autoimmune disease, self-destruction. And autoimmune disease can kill you from the inside.
And that's on the increase, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because our biological lives are complements to the environment.
Yeah.
The more stress and more violence on the outside, the more that's taken inside in biology and converted to disruption and disharmony of your own cellular internal community.
So what can we then do as a human race? Maybe it's an obvious question, but here we are. We represent, in a way, the 50 trillion cells that are in our own bodies on a bigger scale. And here we are. We see the intelligent ones, the ones that are really looking, are seeing what happens inside their own body. They're seeing what happens on the outside. But as you mentioned again in Spontaneous Evolution, there's also the consensus reality.
Yes.
And even though individual people can see what's happening, what can they actually do when there's this whole other I suppose, stronger force playing its part.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's a stronger force because everybody's mind is like a tuning fork. Because actually, you can read brain activity from outside your head with a new thing called magnetoencephalograph. Most people are familiar with electroencephalograph. Put wires on your head and read your brain function.
Okay, yeah.
The new one, magnetoencephalograph, they put a probe out here, and they can read your brain function from outside. Well, it's a very important point. He says, well, if you're reading my brain function from outside, then what am I doing? I must be broadcasting my brain function. So all of us are like tuning forks. But if we're all out of tune, then there's a tendency for even a tuning fork that tries to stay in tune will be pushed out of tune by something we call entrainment. And the issue is, how can you survive in this world? And the answer is you must essentially detach yourself from this field around you, not be taken in by the stories, not buy into the fear, not to buy into the threats on our existence, and start to recognize, look, we are creating these lives. If you buy other people's creation, then you manifest what they're creating. If you want what you want, then you have to not get engaged. And the more conscious you become, the less you are affected by the outside fields. And so this rising consciousness that we're seeing is the evolution of humanity to rise above the noise of the background and recognize you're the creator, just like we talked about. If you can create a honeymoon for yourself while you're in love, and everyone started to create a honeymoon for themselves, then all of a sudden the concept of war and violence would disappear, because if everybody's in love and everybody's in harmony and everybody's so excited by being here, then the competition and violence that we live by because of today's beliefs would disappear. And the reality is we are moving in that direction right now. Day by day, more people are taking back the power of saying, I'm not buying your belief.
You have to be consciously stand apart, don't you? And
Yes.
say, I'm not going to be part of this.
Right. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, well, I'm going to go in there and fight that system. And I go, that's not really good either, because if you're fighting the system, then you're contributing energy, whether it's pro or con, to that system. The way to fight the system is not to be part of the system. And it's fun because I talked to some British people I know. I forgot what they were called, but there were people who are somewhat living all through England, but nobody knows where they are or who they are. They're sort of out there, and they're having this life independent of the government even knowing who they are. And it's like some level, we all have to start doing that. But when we do that, then we'll find there's more of us than the other ones. And then all of us who are on the outside of the system actually become the new system.
So there becomes this critical point where things start to shift, you feel?
Yeah, and I think we're really approaching that with 2012, and I think that is a very auspicious beginning, because it's not a mystical thing. It's really a change in the energy fields of the Earth, because the Earth is changing its position in relationship to the Milky Way. So basically, the energy that comes from all the stars and the sun especially influence who we are. When we change our positions in the relationship to the field, we change our response, because we evolved in the field of energy. And when the field of energy changes, so do we.
Something else you talk about in the book, which I found quite fascinating, was the placebo effect and the nocebo effect.
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of people understand what the placebo effect is. And what is this? Well, it's interesting because medical science has revealed that from 1/3 to 2/3, which is significant, of all healing, whether it's drug-related or surgery or whatever healing process, the healing didn't come about from the process. The healing came about because the person believed the process was going to heal them. So if I give you this brand new drug and it's purple colored, because that makes it really special, and it's funny because there is a drug, a purple drug, and they said, it's purple. And everybody's like, oh, wow, that's got to be special. But people believe that the drug holds this effect. And you give a person this drug, and all of a sudden they heal themselves, and they say, yeah, the drug did it. And then you tell them later, but it was just a sugar pill. That healing didn't come from the drug. It came from the belief in the drug. So the belief in healing
So it comes
is
back
what
to the
heals
mind
you.
again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's again the power of belief. In this case, it's a very positive belief that this procedure, drug, or whatever is going to heal me. But what people haven't talked about, because everyone knows about the placebo effect, is that the placebo effect is based on a positive thinking. What is the consequence of negative thinking? Well, science has a term for it, but it hasn't really come out in the public. It's called the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect has been revealed by science that a negative thought can not only make you ill, but a negative thought could also kill you. You can be scared to death in a real sense, okay? And why is that important? Because it turns out it's not just the positive thought of a placebo that's influential. The negative thought works the same way with the same power, but in the opposite direction. So basically, it's not placebo, nocebo. It comes down simply this: it's the power of thought. And a positive thought will move you in a healing direction, and a negative thought will move you into an illness direction. But before I get off that topic, I don't want people to go out there in the audience and go, oh, one of those positive thinking kind of guys. And it's like, it's more than just positive thinking. It's a commitment and an intention of positive thinking. It also really needs the support of your subconscious belief. Because if your subconscious belief is going, oh, that new age weirdo stuff, if that's what your subconscious is programmed to believe, and yet your conscious mind is the one that says, I will think positive thoughts, and I go back to the data. Only 5% of your life is coming from the conscious mind. So if you're only entertaining a positive thought with your conscious mind, you're only contributing 5% of that to your life. 95% of your life is still coming from the subconscious. And if the subconscious doesn't hold those beliefs, then you're actually fighting yourself and not likely to realize the expression of a positive thought.
So let's look at this again practically. So someone's not feeling well, they've got, I don't know, they've got the flu, or
Yes.
they've got something wrong with their stomach or something. What should they practically do? They should presumably go to the doctor and get a diagnosis. Would you go along with that? I'm just trying to see where this goes in day-to-day life.
Well, I wouldn't say don't go to a doctor, but I say before you go to a doctor, just look around and think about this. What's going on in your life? Where the stress is coming from? Because it's almost your physiological expression is a complement to your life experiences. Those people that are happy are healthy. As I said, when you're in the honeymoon, you didn't get sick in the honeymoon. That's when you're absolutely healthy. But when you got caught back up into real life, that's when illnesses start to occur. So we always look at, oh, I must be sick. There must be something wrong with my biology. When it turns out, it didn't begin with your biology. Only about 2% of illness is actually connected to genetics, let's say. 98% of illness is not just genetics, it's environment. So when a person says, oh, I have the breast cancer gene, and people think, oh, I'm going to get breast cancer. And I say, well, wait. 50% of women that have the breast cancer gene get cancer. What about the 50% that have the gene and didn't get the cancer? And we never study that side. We only study the side that got the cancer. And you find out, well, what is it that the 50% do that don't have the cancer yet have the gene? What's different? The answer is their lifestyle is different. Their stresses, their fears, their concerns are not the same as the one that get the illness. The genes are like give you a propensity to get a disease, but that propensity is based on how you perceive life. And it's interesting, studies show that when children get adopted into a cancer family, the adopted child will get the cancer with the same percentage or probability as any of the natural sibling. And you say, but the child came from totally different genetic stock. And the point is, yes, it wasn't the genes that promoted the cancer, it was the lifestyle that promoted the cancer, especially the lifestyle of stress. And then I say, well, if stress is causing lifestyle, I go look around at the world and I go, my God, no wonder everybody's sick. Every day is filled with more stress than the day before. And if you buy into the stress, you take that disharmonious vibration, essentially, bring it into your life, and you end up with disharmony inside your body. Your life is a reflection of what you see.
Yeah, it's a question of going back a few steps. That's what I'm hearing. And just looking to see, well, I'm not feeling well, and I had the same thing last year. What's behind that? Am I happy in my life? What is emotionally happening?
Absolutely.
What is happening physically? Am I doing the right things to support my body?
Absolutely.
It's a fundamental look, isn't it?
I don't want to say don't go to the doctor, so I'll go back just 20 years ago, the last time I went to a doctor.
Okay.
I went to a doctor because I had pneumonia. And I said to myself, well, I can see why at that moment in my life there was so much stress going on in my life that I could see I had opened my system up to that. But then I also realized, okay, well, I can handle this with my consciousness. But then I realized the bacteria were doubling and they're growing faster than I can handle my consciousness. So I said, okay, now's the time for some penicillin. But the concept of it was, I don't rely on the penicillin, and all I had to say was, look, I get back on my feet and I go, it was my responsibility. And if I don't get into that same stressful situation again, then I won't have to go through this again. And it's been 20 years.
So it's intelligent learning, isn't it?
Yes. Don't discard the element of medicine until your consciousness gets high. And the fact is, when people have lower consciousness, because they're not strong enough in their consciousness to really manifest everything they want, they really need to take care of themselves more, eat better, better nutrition, do more exercises, do these things to add to your health. But the surprising thing is, if you get more and more and more conscious, there's a point where you get so conscious, then you become like the person we refer to as Jesus, who does all these miracles. And what did Jesus say about the miracles? He said, you could do these better than I can do them, but you don't believe. And that is the absolute truth. Because when you fully have control of your consciousness, with that belief, you do create the miracles. The miracles of spontaneous remission, for example, a person terminally ill who all of a sudden says, I'm not buying this. I'm going to change my vision of life. And the moment they change their perception, they have what's called a spontaneous remission. Again, that would be called a miracle, but what was it? Taking full control of consciousness and manifesting a life of being fully conscious and present and seeing what brings harmony into your life and avoiding or eliminating as best you can any of the disharmony that exists on the outside, because disharmony will make disharmony inside.
Yeah, how I'm hearing this is the subconscious you talked about early is often unconscious.
Yes.
And by what you're talking about, the subconscious, the unconscious becomes conscious.
Yeah.
And through that, change can happen.
Where the consciousness can go back and review it, because the consciousness is the one that has a perspective. And you become your subconscious. So it's very interesting, because what I talk about is, look, people healed themselves innately for 1 million years before there were medical schools, okay? Because we are innately able to heal ourselves. You cut yourself, you don't really need a doctor to heal the cut. The cut heals by itself, and all the illnesses can. But then I say, but the subconscious, which was programmed the first 6 years, go back to the 6 years. And I would say, in a conventional family, that when a child got sick in the family or any member of the family got sick, the conventional phrase they heard was, oh, we have to take Billy to the doctor. Mom has to go to the doctor. What did we learn? That's a program that says, if I am sick, it didn't say heal yourself. That wasn't the lesson. The lesson was, when I am sick, I have to go see this doctor. And here's the joke, which I like about it, because you ask a lot of people that get sick and go to the doctor and ask them, they say, you know, it was really funny. I got well on the way to the doctor, or I got well waiting in the doctor's office. And I go, you know, that's funny, but it's not a joke for this reason. You were always able to heal yourself until you got a program. What was the program? Go to the doctor. So basically, and which I love about it, because nobody said what the doctor had to do. You just had to go to the doctor. So the point was, these people are sick, but they got a program that says, well, I'm sick, but I can't heal myself. Why? Because I didn't go to the doctor. So they make a commitment, they go to the doctor, and on the way to going to the doctor, in the doctor's presence, they completed the commitment, because it never said the doctor had to do anything, just had to go. And at that moment, all of a sudden, the innate ability to heal themselves start working. And then they find themselves in the doctor's waiting room feeling, God, I feel a lot better than I did when I got here. And the answer was, because you made a program of limitation, then you succeeded by following the program. I'm showing up. And that's all you had to do, because all you had to do is go see the doctor.
You talk about, again, in your first book, about how cells automatically move away from toxicity and towards nutrition.
Yes.
And it seems that as human beings, that's something that we're trying to do, but we get it wrong a lot of the time. We're trying to move away from unhappiness, or what we think makes us unhappy, and towards what we think makes us happy, but we get it muddled up, don't we?
Well, yeah, but you see, the key word you said is what we think makes us happy.
That's right.
So, I mean, I was caught in that in the old days too. Before I became aware, I thought at one point, wow, I'm going to buy that little, that car. I bought a car that looked like a Ferrari called the Pantera back in the 70s. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be happy. I got this great car. So I got the car, and about like 3 days later, it's like, now I got this car. I'm not any happier. And as a matter of fact, I got now 3 speeding tickets, because every day I took the car out. Of course, I couldn't go 30 miles an hour with it. So every day, it was like the car became a burden to me. And it was all of a sudden said, well, that whole program that Ferrari is going to make you happy, that was a misprogram. It wasn't the car that makes you happy. And I started to find out it wasn't the material things that make you happy. What makes you happy? Love makes you happy. Good food will make you happy. Harmony in your environment makes you happy. These things are, harmony in environment, where's the price tag on that one, Basically, having a relationship with somebody that supports you and fulfills you, where's the price tag? we always thought that, oh, money gives you happiness. So we had all those billions of people out there every day running in the streets. How much money can I make? Because if I get enough money, I'm going to be happy. And then you find out even people with the most money are not happy. And programming was wrong. If we were programmed to seek out companionship and community and love, that's where you make us happy. Change the whole game.
But it's almost as if we have to go through a process of finding certain things don't work to find out what does work for us.
Well, that's true, but then the question is this: how many people go through the process, find it doesn't work, and then repeat the process and it doesn't work again? It's like, oh yeah, I've been married 4 times, somebody was saying. It's like, God, they repeated the same error already 3 times with the ideas. Do you think by the 4th time maybe you could learn that whatever pattern you played 3 times in a row will probably play itself again until you change, not your partner? You keep bringing in the same partner with different colored hair and a different name, but you brought that person in and you play the same game over again. The question is, can you learn? The answer is you can, but do many people learn? The answer is no, because they keep thinking that it's just my fate. That's just the way life is.
But their subconscious still remains unconscious.
That's the problem.
The key,
Until you change the subconscious program, the subconscious is a habitual mind. It's a habit. Yeah. Until you change the habit, you will replay the habit. That's why it's called a habit. So you keep replaying the same program. And so, you keep, it's like a definition of insanity is the idea of keep doing the same thing and expect something different to happen. The fact is, no, that's insane. Why? You keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same thing. And if the habit mind is giving us the story, then the answer says, well, how do I change it? And the answer is change the subconscious mind, because that's where the habits are that we got from other people. Again, this is most important. The fundamental habits in subconscious mind came from other people, and that's why they rarely match what you want in your conscious mind, which is you, and you create those programs. And yet the fundamental programs of subconscious were downloaded during that first 6 years of our development.
At the beginning of the book, you have a dedication, which I really like, which I wrote out, and you dedicate it to Gaia, the mother of us all. May she forgive us our trespass. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that quote.
Well, when I finally started to realize a very simple truth, and it was like an old spiritual word, but I now understand the biological connotation of it, that we were made in the image of the environment. And so we are complements to the environment. And yet what we have done is, without being aware that our biology is dependent on the environment, that we have systematically undermined, destroyed Mother Nature and Gaia. And in the process, now we're finding we are threatened with our own extinction. And the fact is, well, we didn't know what we were doing. But the question is, will Gaia allow us to come back? And the answer is absolutely. Because just as much as a person can come back from the edge of death with something called a spontaneous remission, even though science has already recognized we are facing our extinction, so we could say that we're a terminal patient, humanity is a terminal patient, the concept of changing our belief system will allow the garden to come right back to fullness again. So we are in a learning stage to remove ourselves from the beliefs of our current civilization, which undermine not just the humans, but the environment that we're in. And the problem is, we were created as a complement to a certain environment. Since we are destroying that environment, then we are no longer complements to an environment. Then we don't fit by definition. And that is why scientists recognize we are facing our extinction. So I like to apologize to nature, saying, geez, I'm really sorry, we didn't get it, but we're learning. And more people, especially the younger people, very importantly, are recognizing you cannot destroy this environment and survive. And that we must pull together and honor Gaia, the mother of us all. Because by returning our love back to Gaia, Gaia will give us back the love and the life that we can have on this planet.
Absolutely. Something you look at in spontaneous evolution too is how science and spirituality are coming together. They used to be very separate. There used to be
absolutely.
The scientific world, which was very factual driven, and that's that, and you couldn't change it. And spirituality was trying to open up things, but they really are meeting now, aren't they?
Yeah, it was interesting because the spiritual world of religion was talking about the invisible moving forces that shape the physical reality, and we call them spirit. And then science only came into existence because it made a detente with the church. In the very early days of science, it said, look, we won't tread on your invisible spiritual domain. We will just study the physical world. And when Newton was able to predict the movements of the planet by just looking at the physical features, then scientists got the ideas, well, if you can understand how the universe operates by just studying the material world, we don't need that invisible stuff. But in 1925, Newtonian physics was incorporated, subsumed by a bigger physics called quantum physics. And quantum physics emphasizes the universe is made out of energy, it's not made out of matter. And then I say, well, what does the quantum physicists call this energy that the universe is made out of? And I say, well, they call it the field. I say, what's the definition of the field? I love this. Invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. I go, my goodness, that's the same definition as spiritual that's used for spirit. I go, yes, quantum physics emphasizing the invisible field as primary to the physical world is essentially reiterating the statement of the spiritual people who talked about the invisible forces shaping our physical existence. And so by definition, science, the new science of quantum physics, is bringing us back into alignment with the spiritual reality. Hopefully, the dogmatic beliefs of the church, which had talked about these wonderful terms but didn't allow us to live there, and science, which is still stuck in its material plane, will both divest themselves of their dogma and allow us to come together and recognize that we're all part of that invisible field, that we don't even live in our own bodies, if you understand the nature of how the cell works, that we are part of the field being downloaded into our body, that we're all, by definition, the field, or we're all spiritual, same definition. And if we recognize this, the unity of it, and that you cannot be taken out of the field and you cannot be, in a sense, punished by the field, you are the field, then maybe the beliefs, those very restrictive beliefs from both science and from the dogmatic religion, will disappear, because the people owning their own spirituality, owning their own responsibility, and not saying, oh, it's spirits that did this or things, other factors, that we are the creators, will generate a new world. Because what I firmly believe is very simple. Go out and talk to the average person anywhere in the world and say, if you could create a world, what would you like? Oh, I'd like a world where there's peace and harmony, and I'd like some food and a job. And I go, isn't it amazing how everywhere you go in the world, virtually the entire population has the same belief? I go, then how come we don't have it? And the answer is because the leadership isn't exercising that belief. So I trust the people to take over the leadership of this world, and that the structure that is actually in a state of collapse. When it collapses, this will be our opportunity to evolve from the very destructive Darwinian perception of a world into a more holistic holism that says, we're all part of the same system. We're all cells in the same body. And when we work together, we will create magic on this earth like nothing has ever been seen before. So I'm very optimistic about that.
I think that's a great place to finish, Bruce. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. I so appreciate this opportunity.
And I just want to do a little plug here for Bruce's two books, Belief of Biology of Belief rather, and Spontaneous Evolution, which I had as a talking book, which I really enjoy listening to in the car. So thank you, Bruce Lipton, and thank you for watching Conscious TV. Hope we see you.
Yeah, so any responses to what you heard him speak, how much you could take in and how much you could follow, because I will try to unpack it a little bit. I'll spend half an hour unpacking the video, but I feel personally that it's a very stunning video, and I wish that this video is shown all across the world, in all the schools, all the colleges, all the teachers, all the parents, all the doctors, everyone in the healing profession needs to watch it. I think this guy is really a very, very great torch bearer for wisdom across the globe, and he's also able to express things very beautifully. Typically scientists are not blessed with that ability to be very clear about what they're saying, but he's an exception. So I like it a lot, and I recommend that all of you watch it at more than 2, 3, 4, 5 times, because he's sharing many, many intricate ideas. And there are other videos also that all across the YouTube you will find. So let us start. What do you gather? Let's start. Who wants to start first? The critical points that you can remember and you grasp. Okay.
Sir, what struck me throughout the discussion was the evolution is based on the community and cooperation. So that's a very deep topic, sir.
Yeah.
So that is one thing which made me attracted me a lot towards the discussion. And the second one, how people self-destruct and create autoimmune disease. I think, of course, I really enjoyed all the 54, 55 minutes of the discussion, but these two things were really impressive to me.
Yeah, that is a very great point, because he's telling that no, we are a community of 50 trillion cells. Our body is a community of 50 trillion cells. We think in terms of I and me and mine, but we don't realize that our brain, which is representing this whole body, is basically like a prime minister on behalf of the 50 trillion cells. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a weird metaphor perhaps, but maybe it's an appropriate metaphor. In a way, the 50 trillion cells have democratically elected the brain to represent them. And then the brain says, I and me and mine, but in the process becomes a bad government by, encouraging or, getting fed by poor thoughts, poor beliefs, dysfunctional thoughts, dysfunctional beliefs, which will not support the 50 trillion cells to thrive and, survive and grow and blossom and prosper and be very joyous and happy and peaceful. Because what we are saying is that ultimately, if we are these 50 trillion cells, and if we do things which make them sick and which make them afraid and close down, then who is going to suffer? These cells alone, or we are going to suffer? We are going to suffer. What I call Rajiv is going to suffer. So it is a very, very earth-shaking, discovery by Bruce Lipton. It needs to be taught, I feel, in all the schools, in all the colleges, a basic thing to know. It's a basic thing to know how you can stop harming yourself and stop, and start to flourish in life. Because the very base for flourishing in life is to have a healthy body and a beautiful mind. Isn't it true? So he says that since our body is a community of 50 trillion cells, Earth itself is a community of many, billions and trillions of cells. If I count all the species on Earth, and each member of each species on Earth, maybe each member of each species on Earth can be compared to, a cell in the body. Just like, liver cell will have maybe, liver will have maybe billions of cells. Similarly, we have, hundreds of millions of lions and tigers. It should be. There would be a time when there would be like that, huge numbers of lions and tigers. They are not in that huge number today, but there may be other animals, other creatures which may be still in large numbers. What I'm trying to say that, we can think of each creature or each species as a organ in the Earth's body. Just like, we have liver, kidney, pancreas, different organs. Each species can be considered as an organ in Earth's body. And you can visualize Earth itself as or herself as a living being. And that idea is called Gaia. When Earth is represented as a being, colossal being, she is referred to as Mother Earth or Gaia. She becomes a goddess. And your goddess's body, we all are like, living organisms, and we are like each of these cells. So very beautifully, metaphorically, Bruce Lipton paints a picture where Earth itself is a living organism, and each one of us is perhaps, a cell, a living cell. So from that perspective, if we, as a human species, let's forget other species for the time being, within human species, if we, the human members of the human species, are not functioning in harmony with one another, and we are waging war against one another, and we hate each other, and we fight with each other, and we sabotage each other's prosperity, then we are suffering from an autoimmune disease at a community level. So we, as a community of human cells, we are suffering from autoimmune disease. We are self-destructing. We are self-destructing. And maybe, we are facing the challenge of, who knows, becoming extinct in a few decades or a few centuries from now. If we don't, make a necessary correction, the environmental crisis, the way it is being presented, may spell the doom for human species and many other species also along with us. So, but then that is completely unnecessary. Because if this is what science is telling us, that genes and cells thrive in a healthy environment, and it is not as if the genes create the environment, but in fact the environment creates the genes. I mean, what I mean environment means, let's say physical health, that is environment, emotional, mental health. Because if a body is sick, you can't remain emotionally healthy for long. If a body is sick, you can't remain mentally buoyant for long, because in a diseased body, your optimism will slowly be drained away, and your happiness will be replaced by sadness, pessimism, and despair, because you are facing a lot of pain, lot of misery, and maybe impending death in the short term. For a terminally ill patient, life can no longer be joyous, isn't it? Because the programs which produce the terminal illness, they themselves are very sad and very, very negative type. So Bruce says that all this is completely unnecessary, because the knowledge is now available. Knowledge is now available that happiness is not in material objects. Happiness is in how we interpret life around us, which may be largely material in nature. I have a fan running over my head, okay? Now, if I raise a question that where is this fan being experienced, the answer is it is being experienced by me, in me. By itself, the fan is redundant. It is only a material object rotating, but it is me that is perceiving the fan. It is me that is enjoying the air coming from the fan. Without me, the fan has no relevance. But if the fan is running and I am not able to perceive the fan, I am not able to enjoy the fan's air, then obviously I will not be thankful to the fan. I will not be thankful to my fate, which allows me to enjoy this fan. And as a result, I won't be able to feel gratitude. I will take this fan for granted. I will take my car for granted. I will take my wife for granted. I will take my children for granted. I will take my house for granted. I will take my job for granted. And I will live a very unconscious life, thinking all these are my entitlements. So gratefulness will never be there. But then, that is an unconscious lifestyle, because we are blessed with so many gifts by nature, by, providence, by God, whatever. But we are not appreciating that. So why it has happened? The simple example tells you how it happened. I became unconscious of the blessings that are given to me by life. Fan being one example. And many other things I told, car, wife, children. All these are gifts by nature, by blessings by God. And I'm not perceiving them as blessings. Why? Because I take them for granted. So taking things for granted itself is an unconscious attitude or a subconscious attitude. So Bruce is saying that, 5% of the time when we are conscious, we run our life consciously, intelligently, but remaining 95% of the times, we become unconscious because our subconscious programs, patterns take over. And when they take over, they create whatever type of program they are. And mostly, our programs are of negative nature for most of us. Why? Because we took birth in a society where we were taught the principle of scarcity, the principle of competition. You have to fight to get things for your survival and for your thriving. Right? So it's a dog-eat-dog world. Darwinian evolution, is basically based upon dog-eat-dog world. In the tough environment, you develop, competencies which allows the organism to survive and perpetuate itself. That's Darwinian, model of evolution. But Bruce Lipton says that is a troublesome, model. He says the time has come for teaching spontaneous evolution, conscious evolution, not evolution based upon fight. Okay. So he very beautifully explains that in earlier times in the jungle, generally people will be cooperating in a community. Tribes or communities, they'll be cooperating with one another, and they will feel love and compassion for one another, because they are banding together to survive in the wilderness. And only once in a while a lion will come, and then we need all the energy to run away from the lion. But then after the lion is taken care of, we again come back to our normal life where everyone is living in harmony and with a feeling of brotherhood. But in the modern life, the way it is structured now, everything is competitive, everything is trying to eat each other. Then in this kind of environment, stress is very natural. It is like, we are running away from the lion all the time. Every day, a lion is chasing us. The way we are running to survive is as if a lion is chasing us all the time. So naturally, if a lion is chasing you all the time, stress hormones will continuously keep pumping in the blood. So he talks about the chemistry, like how you create a chemistry in the body. If you have happy thoughts, beautiful thoughts, happy hormones release in the bloodstream from the brain. And they keep you in a very healthy mood, a happy mood, and the cells also thrive. The genes also, are able to repair the cells, wherever it is necessary. And you have a beautiful health, wonderful vitality. And you enjoy life also emotionally and mentally because you have very beautiful programs. The idea is that when we were young, till age 6 or 7, all the relevant programs have already been downloaded into us. Because, in another, place, Bruce explains, and other people also explain that children till age 6, they are in the theta brainwave state. I will share with you as we go along about different brain states also, alpha, beta, gamma, theta, and delta. These are the 5 different brain states. Okay. So, beta is our normal consciousness where we do day-to-day work, we study, we compete, we play, whatever. Alpha is slightly lower frequency. There is a gray matter in the brain that vibrates at a certain frequency. So beta is a very high frequency, 25 to 35, vibrations per second, and slowly it slows down. Then in alpha, it is between 10 to 15, vibrations per second, and like that. So you go from, beta to alpha, then you go to theta, and then delta. There's a gamma also. Gamma is, I think, a very different level of, vibration where it is meditators experience the gamma. But generally, it is, beta, alpha, theta, delta. So the children are basically in the state of theta till age 6. That is why you will see children, till age 6, they have a very beautiful expression. They're filled with joy and happiness. It's like a dreamy state. Theta is like a dreamy state. When you are dreaming, we are in the theta state. So that is a hypnotic state. In that state, whatever they are observing is imprinting upon their consciousness very powerfully. And at that stage, retention is very deep and very long. It is almost impossible to obliterate memories from that age. They are very long-term memory. In the theta state, whatever you store in the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind, and you never forget those. Okay. So that is the layer that he's calling the subconscious programming. What gets programmed into us in the theta state till age 6. And that will tell you why Sigmund Freud, perhaps without knowing this reason, claimed that personality gets fixed at age 6 or 7. If you remember Theory of Personality, I taught you that. Sigmund Freud believed that personality gets fixed at age 6 or 7, doesn't change after that. And he was very adamant about it. And he was right about most number of people. Right. But Jung, broke away from him by telling that it's not like that. People can change. In a way, Jung is similar to Bruce Lipton because he has seen people and he himself has grown through so many shifts in his consciousness. So to come back to the Bruce Lipton's interview again, so he's telling about this again and again that it is very important for us to understand that it is the environment which shapes the cells and the genes and not the vice versa. So if you believe in the power of genes over you, you believe in fate. But if you believe in the power of the internal environment that you can create through your thoughts that you pick, your beliefs that you choose, then you are not a victim of fate. You are the creator of your destiny. So choice is yours. You want to be fated and controlled by your genes, or you want to create a new life which is very happy, vibrant, blissful, and peaceful, and filled with abundance through your consciously reprogramming the brain, the subconscious level of the brain. Okay. So that is where you will see the importance of meditation and spiritual practices come into picture. So I will take a pause here. I'll ask other people. Raj shared these 2 points. So I unloaded my points in response to that. How about Shaju? How about Saschit? Reena, I see here. Hi, Reena. Very happy to see you here.
I want to
You
share,
yeah.
that, it was actually like a complete fundamental understanding. Like you said, when I was getting that urge that, this is definitely to be shared with everyone in school, right from primary or even before, if they are able to understand. It is something so basic and fundamental that we never looked at it in this way, right? I mean, about how the entire environment alone has an impact on what we do. Meaning to say, it comes down to talking about how we can create as creative beings, but it also scientifically brought that bridge of understanding, that how it was not only about genetically, or we also a lot of times look at hereditary, and we blame it to fate, and we spoke about all of these sessions until now about karma as we used to know it earlier, or how we do away with these aspects of shadow. And the aspects of shadow is right from karma, right from all our programming that we have had, all the past incidences that we have had. And for example, I was trying to let go a lot of my own recent programming, I would say, that I had formed. So it was trying to rewire, or giving an opportunity to understand that these things, that even now, even at this current moment, I have the ability to let go of these things and start rewiring my programming. So it was a very beautiful one. And as the video was being played, I had a lot of other realizations also. I don't know why it came through, but it just came through. I mean, I started feeling really. I was shedding a layer of certain fear that I had. I don't know what exactly it was, but fear of life itself, probably in general. A lot of I was starting to feel more lighter. A lot of sense of fear was definitely dropping. I was able to enjoy just being here, as experiencing this current moment also in a very elated sense. So all that was experientially happening while I was trying to understand what is being said, um, and definitely trying to remember also the aspects about how creating life is important in terms of you create life with three tools that have been given to us: thought, words, and actions. And how important that connection of the previous class also on the metaphor you also recapped in the beginning about if you're boarding the wrong train, we can immediately decide at that moment, even if I'm getting into awareness that, okay, this is a wrong journey that I don't want to get into. So let me stop it there. It's okay if I've started that journey. I can, probably midway also deboard that train. So all of these aspects was really very refreshing. The metaphor, especially, like when you say when it's a metaphor, it stays a very long time as a huge example. So all of this was really nice. And yeah, I think it was a very long video, so I couldn't encapsulate, but I was just sharing my experience of listening to it.
Yeah, so I think that's a very beautiful. I mean, all that you shared is very very wonderful, and certainly the video is long, and he's an important teacher, and there are other videos also, other books also he has written. He has a lot to share, and there are many nuances that he has to share. So we have to watch these things repeatedly, a few times till they become a part of our knowledge, so to speak. Because in ancient India, the way people learned was, encapsulated in 3 steps: Sravana, Mananam, Nididhyasana. I have taught in my courses in ASB, if you remember. Sravana means you first listen. So this guy was speaking, you listened, right? Sravanam. Now you contemplate what he's telling. So contemplation. Then as you contemplate upon his ideas, you will start getting your own insights, which may further build your own personal knowledge. So that is how it is. And then you start to practice these ideas. So that is how it is. So we have first listened to these people, and now we still need to contemplate what they are telling. And given that contemplation, we have to see how to apply these ideas in a personal life and in our family, in our workplace, with our colleagues, and see whether we can start shifting our life, bit by bit, bit by bit, by working upon the inner programs. So, I also shared in the last video about a person, Rhonda Byrne, and Secret, the book Secret, Saju was explaining that his wife and one of his best friends, they believe that they are unfortunate. There's a deep-rooted belief in them. And I told that you share this book with them, The Secret. That book also says the same thing, that in many ways, what we are attracting into our life is actually not some fate or some evil god playing tricks with us. It is what we ourselves are attracting through our vibration. Now, what is our vibration? Our vibration is basically nothing but the result of our unconscious patterns of thoughts and beliefs and values and whatnot. So that is what is the level at which we are vibrating. If our thoughts have a certain frequency, then those thoughts will manifest objects of the same frequency, people of the same frequency, relationship of the same frequency, a job of the same frequency, a company of the same frequency, a pet dog of the same frequency, or maybe a wild dog who may bite me in the street, mad dog who may bite me in the street. Who knows, I may have attracted it in my life. So idea is that, it is not a world where we can blame someone else or something else. We are the creators, right? And I think what I'm going to say now is the crux of all these things in many ways. We are the creators of our life, but we unfortunately have become reactors to the life that seems to be coming out from somewhere outside. Things seem to be happening to us. Things are being done to us. But in reality, we are creating what is being done to us. We are shaping what we are experiencing through our thoughts and beliefs and values and behaviors. This is a very intelligent universe which co-creates the reality with us. So, humans being the most conscious species on the planet, which can foresee the consequences of what he or she does, has more creative potential than any other species. Every other species is unconscious, completely unconscious. Whatever they do out of their biological programming. But fortunately with animals, they don't have a social programming. They don't have a psychological programming. Whatever they do naturally, they do spontaneously. Animals never experience shame and guilt. Animals may experience fear because when their biological existence is threatened, when a cow sees a lion, I'm sure her heartbeat will be beating very fast because of fear. But fear they experience, but shame and guilt they never experience. And in human society, shame and guilt are two emotions that are used rampantly by the powers that be to program our mind. We are shamed into behaving appropriately. And what is appropriate is defined by the powers that be it parents, be it teachers, be it government, or be it, the Pope or the mullahs or the priests, whoever it is. Shame and guilt are unnatural emotions to any species except man. Okay. And they are used as weapons to program us. Okay. If I don't behave similar to my peers, I feel little bit embarrassed. I feel afraid. I even feel guilty. Because there is a God Almighty which has told that we have to behave like this, as the priest is saying. And everyone else is behaving like that. If I don't behave like that, I feel guilty. Maybe, I am impure or impious or dirty person. God will not approve of me. I feel very guilty. Then, among the people, what they believe is very good to do. And if I don't do that, I feel shame. If something is very bad to do, I do that, occasionally or surreptitiously, I feel a lot of shame. And if I'm caught red-handed, I feel very, very ashamed. So these are basically emotions which are basically result of social and psychological programming. And all of us are very, very afraid of many such things, social taboos and social stigmas and social prohibitions. And as a result, we have become a slave to the paradigm that the environment believes in. Environment meaning other people believe in. That is a very, very pernicious and vicious situation. So what Bruce Lipton is saying is that the way to reform the system or transform the system is not to fight the system, but is to stay away from the system, to stay transcendent to the system. So what does it mean? That doesn't mean that, in the job that I'm doing, I should quit my job. No, not like that. You can do your job, but you can convert your job into a role that you're playing. It's like an actor acting in a drama. You need not buy all the values and all the, principles and all the beliefs of the management of the company that you work in. You can have your own inner beliefs and values that transfer that support your your freedom, support your creativity, support your happiness, health, harmony. So that is what is the recommendation that Bruce Lipton is making. And as more and more people wake up to their creativity, to their creative potential, and stop reacting, stop blaming, then slowly, as the critical mass is reached, society will suddenly transform. I mean, we can straight away start transforming little by little many people that we influence, but at a certain level of conversion of enough number of people to these radically new ideas based upon science, the earth will go through a consciousness shift. And I personally can see as a teacher that more and more people are waking up to these possibilities. And YouTube and Google and internet and all that is enabling more and more rapid dissemination of these ideas across the population. So I am very hopeful as a teacher that we will very rapidly within maybe next few decades go through a metamorphosis as a society. And pain also will teach. Pain that we have created through our unconscious programming, society, collectively, that will also teach that this is not the way. This is not the way to live as a collective. So these are my thoughts in response to this video. So I will listen to you, but you have to say further.
Yeah, sir, to Saschit's point of environment, right? So basically, Bruce gives two solid examples. One, you take a set of cells and put them into dish and expose them to a negative environment, and he has experienced the cells are being deteriorated because they are not in a healthy environment. And then you take them back and put it into another healthy environment. Naturally, it is rebuilding, recoping, and coming back to the normal state. So that scientific example would, I think, definitely open up a lot of young minds about, a scenario coming in from the real-time experiment. Not many people would be able to, so generally, if you say positive things will happen, people will question how. I think this is one of the examples where we can easily say that, hey, listen, 50 trillion cells, and you put them into negative environment. If one can get deteriorated within few hours or few days, then what happens to your body weight, which contains about 50 trillion cells? I think that's a beautiful example. And another example, sir, he talks about a man or a woman proposing somebody, or about to venture into a healthy relationship. So then they focus more on their self-management, and they are more conscious about their appearance and their behavior. That particular time, no complaints, no concerns, everything is flashy and lighty in life. Again, I mean that relationship becomes a little older. For example, 6 months, 1 year down the line, I think that experience goes back to the subconscious mind, and it becomes a habit. If we start replicating the same thing, what we experience at the beginning of the relationship starts, I think that will keep people conscious. I'll stop here, sir. I have a couple of more points, but I'll
So he talks about falling in love. When someone falls in love in romantic relationships, that honeymoon period, he says, is so beautiful, right? And when you are trying to attract a girl or a man in your life, you dress up so carefully, you are so conscious about your appearance. Normally you may dress up in 10-15 minutes, but that day you may take 1 hour, 45 minutes to dress up very carefully because you're in love. You do everything, with a lot of care. You become suddenly very patient. When you are drinking tea with your beloved, you may spend 1 hour drinking a cup of tea, isn't it? But on other days, you may rush through the tea and try to run, as if, you have to catch a train. Generally, we are like that. We are impatient, running from here to there. But when you are in love, time stops. You want to be with your beloved, and it's a different space. It's like a heaven. It's like a heaven, no, where you are with a goddess or a god. So that is possible through love, he says. So why not create that same, inner environment, by loving ourselves. Now, this is my input. So I think, the input which I can make is that self-love I keep talking about in all my courses. If you love yourself in the same way as you love your beloved, then how life will change for you, because you love yourself. Because when you love yourself, you take care of yourself. Because without care, love is not possible to demonstrate. Because what is love? Love is care. When you love someone, you care for that person, right? So if you love yourself, you take care of yourself. When you take care of yourself, obviously you want to watch such programs, you want to read such books, you want to do everything possible to make your life better and more beautiful. You want to stay healthy, you want to stay young as long as possible, you want to stay energetic as long as possible, you want to understand life at a more deep-rooted level, you want to become more conscious, you want to experience heaven on earth. You want to get married to a beautiful person, you want to have children who grow up to be beautiful people, you want to make your house which is so beautiful and so wonderful. You create a garden, you love your pet, you are basically an embodiment of love itself. And that love, helps you to grow in wisdom, and bring about a transformation in you, your family, your neighborhood, among your friend circle. You become a good influence. And people, when they see you flourishing, thriving, not in terms of career alone, but in terms of inner beingness, richness. And obviously, if you are like that, your career also will progress, flourish. You will not be poor. You will become more rich, actually. You will become more influential. But this time, your influence will not be based on fear. People will follow you because they like you, they love you, they adore you. And this is the principle of leadership also. So self-love unlocks many doors. Many doors. Self-love unlocks many doors. First of all, you become happy because you are loving yourself. When you are happy, you behave with your wife in a very different way. I'll tell you from my personal example. A wife asks, "What are you thinking?" Okay. Earlier, I will get irritated. 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I'll become irritated. That it's like I would react as if it's a dictator trying to even dictate what I am thinking. I should think what she wants me to think, right? That is my reaction earlier. My subconscious was like that. But now, actually, I may tell I am thinking about you in a very jocular way, because I am now in a mood of happiness. So when I'm happy, then she also gets in the happy mood and she also starts joking with me. Oh, how such a wonderful thing has happened. Like that, we start joking with one another. So earlier, what can create a conflict now creates a wonderful moment of togetherness, happiness, some jokes, some leg pulling in a very sweet manner. So even something which was irritating earlier can produce sweetness, more sweetness in life. What has changed? Not her question, but my inner programming. You know what I'm saying? So like that, bit by bit, we dismantle the old programming and reinstall the new programming, which produces happiness. And as a Sadhvi was telling in the previous video, we decide before boarding a train being thought. Moment we notice that we are blaming someone, let's say we blamed someone for 10 minutes, but after a while, when we come back to our senses, having gone through programs like this or courses like this, we remember, oh, I was blaming again. Then, we remember, oh, this was a bad train. This train I have been, sitting on for so many years, 30 years. Let me drop. Let me get down from this train. So next time, when you take a conscious decision like this, now there is a memory inside that, no, this is a bad train. Next time again, when you feel like blaming someone, this memory will come. It is awareness, because the conscious mind has thought about it. So this is how it happens. When the next time you start blaming, again this conscious mind will become conscious. No, this is subconscious program. I have to desist from climbing on this train. So you will very quickly, disembark, not do that. Like that. So this practice leads to what is called mindfulness. So what Bruce is telling, and this practice that he's recommending, will slowly lead us to mindfulness. So we'll go to mindfulness space also. It's a vast space, a lot of material in mindfulness. So as we go through these sessions, we'll slowly get introduced to more and more similar, fields of study and try to inform ourselves as best as possible. But in the meanwhile, we also have to practice these things, because without practice, change will not be experienced. Now, as you start to experience change in your life, where your personality starts to become happier and healthier, it is only then that these sessions will become very powerful, and you will realize the value of these sessions. And slowly, as more and more people get benefited, then slowly the influence of these sessions and impact of these sessions may grow. We by growing our light may help many people in the world also to get attracted to growing their light, starting with the families and friendships and stuff. And people watching these videos, maybe slowly more people may come and explore, right? That is the way. So I feel, growing our light, that is what it means. Growing our understanding, growing our ability to be peaceful, growing our ability to, not become a victim of the environment, being able to stay away from the negative environment. Even though we may be in a negative environment which we can't escape, but even within that negative environment, we do not let that water to enter the boat. We steer our boat in such a way that the outside dirty water doesn't enter us. That is what the lotus in the mud, like that we become. So we reprogram our brain. And when we have reprogrammed ourselves very sufficiently, a time may come when we have enough courage to simply, get down from a train. Here, train may mean a bad job in a bad company, and restart our life in a more beautiful way, in a more beautiful place. Or maybe create our own beautiful place, our own company, our own organization. Who knows where it may lead us. When Bruce Lipton walked out of university, he would feel very insecure, right? But in the long run, he has been rewarded very well, right? I don't think he will be so happy as a professor as he is today. So it's not that, when we listen to our heart, we always suffer. So we need more and more people who have the courage. I started these sessions. I don't know where it will lead us. I've just started, and let us see where it takes us. So far, so good. We are going strong. I'm also learning in the process, because there's a pressure upon me every Sunday what we shall do, right? And also, when I'm showing something, how it is going to link up. It shouldn't be random, no? So in a way, it's putting pressure upon me also, right? So from whatever I know, I have to piece it together in a very nice manner. And also happiness students who come, they should not feel still the same thing what we studied in the class. Because what is the point then? So that is the idea. So it's putting pressure upon me also, and that pressure is a good pressure. It's helping me also to grow my light. Maybe read more, maybe explore more, maybe research more, maybe think more. So it's a good process. And no one is knowing everything. It's very good to accept from very beginning that we don't know much. We are only growing our light. That's a good attitude, right? So in that spirit, we meet, we discuss, we grow in our light, understanding, explore more and more. So yeah, Raj, you had some more points, right?
Yeah, sir, a couple of questions that came into my mind, sir. One was, is there a relationship between the responsibility and consciousness? And is there a relationship between learning and consciousness? What are your views, sir?
Okay, very good questions. So I'll respond one by one, right?
Sure.
Now, responsibility and consciousness. As we become more conscious, we become more responsible. And when we are less conscious, our unconscious programs manifest as irresponsible behavior. Have I explained properly? Did you get what?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, sir. Yeah.
So there is no bad person. There is only limited understanding and bad habits because of limited understanding. For example, a criminal is, let's say, stabbing someone and robbing someone. So what is that? It's a bad program that he or she is operating from. But from where has that program come? It has come from wrong understanding and unfortunate past experiences. In the past, this person was brutally victimized by someone for their benefit. Brutally means even physically brutally, violently. That is one. So this person doesn't feel any qualms in being violent himself or herself. And that who brutalized this person was someone very close. As a result, the heart has become, like very, very dead, stone-like. And as a result, that love is no longer being experienced. So love is driven by cruelty. And this idea that this is a dog-eat-dog world is very deeply engraved in the subconscious mind. If my father or my uncle or mother can do this to me, what to talk about other people? So the basic assumption is that life is like this, brutal, life is cruel. I become a cruel person and I do that. That is my unconscious program. That is the criminal's program. That is a criminal's program. The main elements of a criminal's program are these basic beliefs. These are beliefs. Life is brutal. No one is your own. You have to fend for yourself. If you don't, attack others, others will attack you. And this is the only way to survive. Obviously, because not educated, doesn't have the skills to earn, money for survival. So this is how it is. I have to fend for myself. So literally, it's a mad dog in the form of a human being, right? Trying to find its food. So what I'm trying to say that it is not the person alone which is bad. It is the programming which is making this person mad.
Makes sense, sir. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a very grossly responsible behavior, but even that has an explanation in consciousness. It's a very deeply unconscious person where very erroneous, deep-rooted beliefs are engraved will behave like this. So this person is a victim of fate. And this person is making other people also victims of fate. The person was stabbed. It was his or her fate. So in a way, unconsciousness, which becomes fate, spreads as fatality, as fate. Our ICUs in hospitals are filled with so many critically ill patients who need not have landed there in the first place, isn't it? It is the unconscious programs of so many people, so many companies, which has poisoned the system. System meaning water, air, food, the mind, that has led to critical illness of such huge proportions in such huge numbers. Why we have so many hospitals today? Why we have so many doctors today? It has never been in human history. No, why we convert the last part of life, last 5 years of life into a war against death? Is it necessary? Is it necessary?
No.
Why can't a very critically ill person above 80 years of age, why can't he or she choose death? And simply tell the doctor, please put me to death peacefully. I want to avoid this pain. Is there any harm in that? When I'm going to sleep today, please administer some pill or something which will just ensure I will not get up again. If I'm okay, what is your problem?
Yeah.
Does it make sense to you?
It does, sir.
So why you are fighting a war on my behalf? My sons are not letting me go. My wife is not clinging to me. What is this tamasa about? If you save me today, 82 years old man suffering from a very severe illness, how long you can keep me in home safe? Again, 3 months later, I will again be in ICU, isn't it? Many families are experiencing this. I am taking an example, consciousness and responsible behavior. So we feel we are being responsible by caring for our dad. Right. And if dad has fear of death, then of course we are maybe justified also. But look at it from a larger perspective. 82-year-old dad who is suffering from so many illnesses, if you save him today with investing 10 lakh rupees in the ICU and bring him home, how long will you be able to keep him home healthy? Are you getting, Raj, what I'm saying?
Yeah, sir. Certainly following.
A few months down the line, again your dad will be found in the ICU.
Yeah.
You will burn another 10-20 lakh rupees. So sometimes responsible behavior, apparently responsible behavior, may be actually ignorant behavior. I will not say irresponsible, but ignorant behavior. Ignorant behavior. So consciousness is directly related to your understanding of your dharma in this moment, with respect to this relationship, with respect to this job, with respect to your child, with respect to everything, your country, everything. So how deeply and well you understand the principles involved in every situation, to that extent you will become responsible. And to that extent you will be acting out of your wisdom and not out of unconscious programs. So increase in consciousness increases the wisdom, and increase in wisdom increases consciousness. How? By increasing awareness. By increase in wisdom, awareness increases. And increased awareness naturally means increased consciousness. The brain also starts to shift. It can be physically seen. As your wisdom grows, your brain also starts to become a little bit different. Neuroplasticity is the subject which explores all these things. Okay. Your brain also starts to function a little bit different. These different lobes of the brain become more harmonized. They start functioning together in a more beautiful manner. A very important point Bruce Lipton made was that earlier we had EEG, electroencephalograph, which used to put wires and things on the head to read the brain. These days we have magnetoencephalograph, which can be, the brain can be probed from a distance without touching the brain, without touching the head. The probe will be here, somewhere here, and still they can read my brain signals. How it is possible? That shows that my brain is radiating these thought signals. So these thoughts are signals or waves, they are radiating from me. And now it suddenly makes sense that how is Amma able to know my thoughts? She is speaking these signals. She doesn't need to enter my brain. So if we have sufficient receptivity, we can even feel the pulses coming out of the brain and know that what these thoughts mean. It may be a level where even language may not matter. The underlying feeling may matter. And that may be palpably felt by someone. So what I'm trying to say is that your consciousness manifests as your thoughts. Your thoughts are energy. They radiate through the universe. The universe responds to this frequency and brings events, people, situations for us to manifest whatever we can manifest given the kind of our thoughts. So to come back to your question, more conscious you become, more wise you become. More wise you become, more beautiful thoughts emanate from your mind. And thoughts govern actions. So obviously, beautiful thoughts, wise thoughts will lead to better actions, what you call responsible behavior. And these beautiful thoughts can be picked by other people, at least unconsciously. What we say, that somehow this person makes me feel at ease. Or when I come before this person, he or she puts me at ease, even without speaking anything. Why and how it happens? Or when I come near this person, I feel a little bit weird. Why it happens? Obviously, you're radiating something. So, to act responsibly, in ancient terms, to act dharmically, we have to first understand the principles which are relevant and appropriate to that situation, that role, our dharma. But that dharma, unless we understand, how can we behave responsibly? It's not that simple also. Little bit about temptations also. See, as you become more conscious, it becomes more difficult to tempt you through materialistic pleasures. Because more conscious you are, naturally more spirit is manifesting through you. Because spirit is consciousness. And more spirit, what we call God, is manifesting through you, more conscious you are. So obviously in that state of mind, temptations can't affect you. They can't distract you from your dharma. Because, and in your brain pattern, if we see, it will be very coherent brain pattern, very coherent signals, very beautiful waves coming out of your brain. What you call your aura. Your aura also is very beautiful, harmonious, very powerful, very integrated. We call it integrity also. Your integrity is very high level. All these happens naturally. Consciousness increases, integrity increases, your aura becomes very harmonious, coherent, your thoughts become beautiful, you want to do the best for everyone. So responsible behavior in this case is no longer an acting. It is a natural, spontaneous action. Have I answered your question, Raj?
Sir, definitely, sir. Very convincing. Thank you.
Okay, so consciousness and responsibility. And second question was consciousness.
Sir, it was about learning new things and the consciousness. The reason why I asked this question is the subconscious mind is habitual, meaning we are just repeating. We are not being very conscious in our approach or response. But when we learn new things, it adds creativity. Hence, I came up with this question of how the new learning correlates with consciousness, whether it really correlates or not.
Yeah, it does. For example, I'll take an example which is appropriate to you. You're an astrologer, right?
Yep.
So you know a lot of astrology. So you know that people are suffering from karma and they have to live through their karma because horoscope says that. Right?
Right, sir.
That is one type of learning. Now you are learning in this class that karma can be also modified.
Yep.
So in a way, your horoscope can also be modified.
Yes, sir.
Because I will give an example, and I have seen such people. Let's say moon is debilitated for someone, okay?
Yeah.
So that means this person may be emotionally very insensitive.
Right.
Now this person joins a course like this, a class like this, starts to be exposed to many such materials like this, and slowly understands that actually I can transform my consciousness. And slowly starts to put in the necessary effort. So this person's consciousness will start to improve. Over time, let's say over next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, if he or she is consistent in transforming their mind, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Bruce Lipton himself shared his story, no?
Yeah.
He was able to transform his mind, right? No,
Right,
he wrote that I want to be anything but me at one point of time in his life. At another point, he became the happiest person in the world according to his own perception. So, in a way, a negative moon, because moon experiences emotions, has become a very beautiful moon, exalted moon. So, how it has happened for him? Through learning only, no?
Right, sir.
He learned new things. The cells became his guru, and they taught him this lesson that environment shapes the cells or the genes or the physical health and well-being, not the other way around. So this new knowledge, this new learning, he applied in his life. He practically rewrote his subconscious programs through his own effort, right? And through that, he rewrote his programming. In a way, he rewrote his horoscope. In the new horoscope, his moon is exalted. So that is why in palmistry we have two hands. Left hand is for the birth hand, right hand is the action hand. Through your actions, you transform your fate. So a good palmist will see both hands before predicting.
Yeah.
And if you see a very normal gross person, both hands lines will resemble each other. But a person who has worked a lot in his life consciously, the hands will show different lines on the palm. These new lines on the palm are result of effort. What is called tapas in India. Tapas is extremely hard effort to transform your consciousness. So learning does have a role to play in elevating the consciousness from tamas to rajas and from rajas to sattva. And as you move from lower frequency to higher frequency, obviously everything changes. Because consciousness has changed. So what it shows is that consciousness is primary and manifestation is the result. Bruce Lipton told in his video that it is the field, in the quantum world they say it is the field which is manifesting the physical reality. And in the spiritual world they say it is the spirit or God which is manifesting the physical reality. Same thing. So idea is that God is a co-creator. God is creating through the amoeba and through the tortoise and tortoise. Why and how? Because tortoise is the result of tortoise mind. A criminal is a result of criminal mind. So same God is creating criminal also. See, if God is not creating criminal, then we have to posit two gods, right? One for the good people, one for the bad people. Is it possible?
No.
There is only one God.
Yeah.
So this is a deep level answer to people who say why God created all these bad things. God did not create bad things. God is like the electricity, the basic energy of the universe, the basic consciousness of the universe. That is one. That one consciousness, one energy manifesting through a poor mind is a criminal mind. A through elevated mind is a saint's mind. That is why Sad, Chid, Ananda, I keep coming back to that. Sad and Chid. Chid is the Chitta part, the thinking part, the awareness part. So as is your awareness, so is your behavior. So as you learn, you become more aware. As you become more aware, behavior improves. I think I've answered your question, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add one point. I'm not sure if it is very relevant. That they used to scientifically talk about the DNA aspect, where the entire science was able to understand only up to 3 to 5% of the reasoning of aspects of DNA, whereas 95+% of the DNA, they termed it as junk DNA. The reason they termed it as junk DNA was because they were not able to find out the reasoning of these DNA aspects, what it is for. So basically, what I'm also trying to understand from our discussion is, the more we keep unlocking, not about learning, but our own aspects that we choose to create. Sorry, I would correct my sentence. Everything that is like the mind and our reality, everything is in place. Meaning to say, even good, bad, ugly, whatever we want to choose, it is all it is all in existence right here, right now. But our ability to choose what we want to create unlocks these DNA, unlocks these genes. For example, that's what even Bruce Lipton was talking about. It's not about genes creating and having a control of a particular illness like cancer, but if I chose a certain aspect of environment which had an impact of creating these kind of genes, similarly, I can desire to choose well-being. I can desire to choose, uplifting, purposefulness, fulfillment, all of these aspects, which would unlock all of these, within us. So, I mean, I just remembered this line.
Yeah. So what you speak makes sense. For example, like Jesus was doing miracles. Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be that there are hidden treasures in this DNA which are able to do such miracles? No, there are people who can heal instantaneously. No, I remember a Brazilian guy, he was doing psychic surgery. Would it be that his DNA, basically treasure, in that DNA treasure, he has unlocked little bit more what you call junk or unexplainable? God has put it for some reason, right? Maybe many things inside the human body are there as our potential, which we will be able to unlock only if we become very perfectly sattvic and very highly enlightened. Would it not be like that?
Yeah.
It is like, the way I like to think about it is, if God has created a lock which is so mysterious and so beautiful that you cannot unlock it through your brain fully. Through your brain, you can unlock only a little bit. But to unlock the entire mystery, you have to open up your heart. You have to open up your soul and connect with God, experiential in nature. Do you follow my answer? Life may be experiential in nature, and we have converted it into a completely intellectual exercise. In a way, we are living out of the head only, little bit of the head here, what we call the intellect. But that may be very unfortunate, why God gave the remaining system to us. the 50 trillion cells. And beyond this body, there may be other bodies also, higher bodies, which could be triggered and activated. So, this is the last point I will make, because 2:05 by my clock. A lot of time we have taken, but time flies in my class. See, in Vishnu's symbology, I'm again returning to that, from the navel of the Vishnu after enlightenment, Brahma is sitting on a lotus. You see that, right? And Brahma is the creative part of the Holy Trinity. So could it be that as you become more and more enlightened, more potential in your DNA, in your brain structure, etc., starts to unlock itself? More hidden capacities in man start to unlock themselves? Could it be that? Can't it be like that? Which rishis have experienced in their experience. Saschit, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree, because there's a movie. In fact, if everyone can also watch it, there's a movie called Lucy.
I have seen that, Lucy.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that is about the brain capacity. It's actually a reverse explanation of
Yeah.
what we spoke. It's not about someone trying to expand their brain capacity, but through other aspects of experience itself, the brain starts unlocking itself to full potential.
Yeah, Lucy is a very beautiful movie, and whoever made it actually has anticipated what reality is from different. They are using a chemical,
Correct.
but instead of the chemical, replace chemical with consciousness.
Yes.
So everyone watch Lucy, and you can just replace that substance with consciousness. That is what I'm trying to say. As consciousness starts to flood your system more and more, you can think of it as what they call the Amritam, the divine nectar, which is in the heavens. That is what it is. So in a way, I'll give another example. When you play cricket, okay, let's say you are batting. Initially, you are scratching around, and then you are a great batsman. After some time, you get into the flow. Now, when you get into the flow, suddenly you see the ball so beautifully. The bat moves in your hand so beautifully. Your footwork is so beautiful and precise. It's as if time has slowed down. When a ball is coming at 145 kilometers per hour, 150 kilometers per hour, it seems like it is coming in a slow medium pace to you. You are able to stroke the ball so beautifully. Others are marveling at your genius. Such a fast ball, you are manipulating it so beautifully. You can play late cut. You can play leg glance. You can lap it over the fine leg like Surya Kumar Yadav is able to do. You know what I'm saying? So when you reach a very high level of concentration, the consciousness flowing through you is so immense in quantity that you're able to do such things. Can't it be like that?
Yeah.
Are you getting what I'm saying? Yes. Same eyes, same reflexes, how they're able to see better and respond much faster, and there's so much beauty. Could it be that there is more consciousness present in the brain?
Yeah.
At that moment?
Yes.
How do you respond, Saju, Raj? Could it be possible?
Absolutely, sir. Since we are taking the cricket example, generally, during my free time, I keep watching what Dhoni says. Dhoni tells people that I always live in present. He doesn't use the word consciousness. Then I started thinking about why he always says I live in present. I do not think about my results and all. I always think about the process. Then I went back and looked at some of his records. He has got world record of stumping people in few seconds. It happens only when the person is conscious on the ground. So that way, if I go back and correlate the example that you give.
Also, he is known as the greatest finisher ever, right? In one-day cricket.
Yeah.
Could it be because his mind is so calm in those moments and the bowler is disturbed?
Right, sir.
Bowler is excited and this man is in the moment. He is completely in the zone. And hence he is able to more often than not come out on the top. He is able to anticipate what the bowler will bowl. He is picking the signal in the brain of the bowler. Isn't it possible?
Yep.
You watch those matches, famous matches which Dhoni won in the last 1 or 2 overs. So many matches, no? There are dozens of such matches, right?
Right, sir.
The bowlers used to fear when Dhoni is on strike, even if 20 runs have to be scored.
Yep.
Why? Because you will see those overs, you can replay it. He often, not often, almost always is able to know what the bowler will do. He is in the right position to hit that right shot. How it is possible? He is reading the mind of the bowler. Maybe because he is in the present moment. He has practiced it for so long. He may not be aware about consciousness and all, but this is what he's tapping into. His occult powers or sixth sense has developed so much. Okay. So it's a good example from sports, but there are people beyond Dhoni's level also in consciousness, right? They can do even more great miracles. Okay. So let's put a stop here with the idea that it's possible for us to grow from a hell or hellish, experience to a heaven-like experience by recreating our subconscious programming, as Bruce Lipton was explaining. And second is that there is no limit to growth in consciousness or growth in our light. Okay. On that optimistic note, we can end today, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for another wonderful session, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.